The way I got started in music, when I was around 10 or 11 years old, I really wanted to play guitar. Specifically, I was inspired by the guitar playing of Chet Atkins because I wanted to play that finger style he did. So Mom and Dad bought me a little cheap department store guitar and started out on that. We found an instructor locally who turned out to be a fairly good classical guitarist, so he kind of steered me toward playing classical guitar finger style. Anyway, I spent years studying the guitar, different styles, all the way into college. My favorite genre of music is all over the spectrum. I like a little of everything. One day you may come into my studio and I may be listening to progressive rock. The next day it might be country music. The next day it might be classical music. So I like all styles of music. As far as contemporary music, my favorite is probably progressive rock. I was introduced to progressive rock by a friend of mine in the early 70s. He had just bought himself a quadraphonic turntable when that was a big thing. Went over to his apartment and he played a song for me, which just absolutely blew me away at the time. And it turned out the song was Roundabout by Yes. And after that, I was a big fan of Yes, and I've always loved progressive rock. I started writing music for myself when I was in college. And then over the years, I wrote a lot of compositions just for myself. Hardly anyone ever heard them. I didn't feel like they were good enough to be played for other people. But I kept doing this for years and years, just writing different things. Some things with a rock style, some with a jazzy style, just all kinds of different things I was experimenting with for years and years. I started playing when I was 11 years old. Although when I was in college, I kind of deviated a little bit and ended up going into computer science for about 20 years. Although I was still involved in music writing for myself and so forth, I mainly was focusing on making a living at the time. But I retired from computer programming a few years ago and decided to get back into music, which was always my first love. ZeusNine happened because I had set up my studio to basically teach guitar after I retired from computer programming. One of my students had written a few songs, and I played some of my music I had written for him, and he was one of the rare people that ever heard any of it. And he decided he wanted me to try to write the music for the songs he had written. So we took a couple of his songs, scored them out. He liked them. We talked Kat into singing them. That's when we discovered she could sing. Then after that, Kat decided she wanted to try writing songs, which I knew she could do because she was a poet anyway. She had written a book. She'd written tons of poems. When she started writing songs, I realized we got something here because I could never write lyrics. I can write music, but I was never good at writing lyrics. So Kat can provide the lyrics and I can score the songs, and that's how ZeusNine happened. Once we discovered that Kat could write songs, what she does is she'll come up with the song, write out all of the lyrics that she wants to use, come up with a basic melody. Once she's got that, she'll sing it for me and I'll record it. Then I take it from there, and my goal is whatever her song is about, I try to paint that picture with the sounds and the music. So at this time, I do all the scoring for all the songs that Kat writes. We've got one or two songs that there may be a co-writer on that we haven't decided if we're going to use or not. But for the most part, yes, I score all the music. I perform all of the guitar parts in the music, as well as the percussion to an extent. Then we have another musician who does flutes and one that does a bass guitar. So the process when we're creating a new song, Kat will write the song, come up with a basic melody. Once she's ready, she'll record that for me. Then I'll take that recording and start creating music around it. Once I've got the music scored, then we'll turn around and do a few test recordings to work out any rhythmic problems between the way she originally sang it and the way I had to score it. Then we'll tidy it up, and then we begin recording all the various instrumental parts. So when we get down to the point of actually recording the music, we don't do it as a band. We actually record one instrument at a time. Usually the first thing we record is Kat's vocals. So all the music is scored, and I have basically an electronic score of all the instruments. We'll record her vocals, then we'll go back and record the bass guitar, the various guitar parts, the flute parts, horn parts, and so forth. So the music itself is a mix of live performers and virtual instruments. Obviously, being progressive rock, the scores are big, strings, brass, and so forth. And it's really difficult to get enough people together to actually play all those parts. So we use electronic instruments for our strings, for example, and most of our brass. But we're trying to use as many live performers as possible. We're hoping to pick up more live performers as we move through this process. So our first single that we're going to release is called A Million Tears. A Million Tears is a little less prog rock and a little more blues than most of our music that you'll be hearing about. In fact, A Million Tears is based on a standard 12-bar blues, whereas some of our other songs are more toward the prog rock genre. This one's a little bit more toward the blues rock genre. We've got other songs already recorded and ready to go except for finishing touches. Probably the third one we'll put out for release will be one called The Wild Rose. The Wild Rose is a song that Kat wrote about the struggles of a young lady in today's society. Now, that particular song is a little bit more toward prog rock because it has several things like meter changes in it that are typical of a prog rock song. Other songs coming up that's a full-blown prog rock is one called The Wizard. Now, I don't want to give away what The Wizard is about. We're actually wanting to see how people respond to it, but it has a very specific point that it's making. It is a fairly long song. I believe it runs about 7 minutes, but it is a big production with electronic strings and brass and just an absolutely fantastic song, I think. Another song that's coming up is called Gabriella. Gabriella is kind of a change of pace. It's not written so much as a prog rock as it's written as a ballad with big strings, very orchestrated. It's a very emotional piece, and I think everyone's going to love that one. It is absolutely beautiful. So there are a number of songs. We have, I think, 7 or 8 right now, pretty well done except for final mixing in the studio. Our plan is to release each one as a single along with a video. Hopefully later this year, the big plan is we will release them on an album that'll include 2 or 3 newer songs that had not been released. And the name of that album we've already picked out will be called Locked Down because obviously of the pandemic that's been going on. We thought it was an appropriate name because most of this has been written and put together during the lockdown. So as far as the production of the music during this pandemic, the biggest problem has been that we couldn't get musicians to come over and do things. Everybody was locked down. So it's made it difficult to have as many live performers in the recordings as we want. But hopefully now that things appear to be getting better, future recordings, there will be more and more live artists as opposed to as much virtual music. Was that